I have to edit that section. Yeah, I was like, oh God. Anyway, as you look at these, marijuana laws was legalizing weed. You had the Montana one. Prejudice simulation was talking about the Holocaust simulation in South Carolina. For these, there are some wonderful stories. And I know I kind of had to run through this because I do think we're just about out of film on this. But as you go through these, the Addicts article is really, really good. The Anthem article generated some discussion. Huck Finn with the N-word, it's got to be on there in some form, so be able to tell me the story of these. Do y'all have any questions that y'all want to hit from these articles? What's that? The Rwanda one was the one about women represent 48% of the Rwandan legislature. We just went over it yesterday. For a second, that's why I say it's just really, really quick. It was an example of government socialization. Go ahead, Ray. Any other questions? Jorge, anything at all?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Anything at all, Min? No. Manuel? Sergio? Justin? Go ahead.
On the political socialization under school in Japan, what was in Japan?
The Japan one I had mentioned was the idea, and it was the idea that in the textbooks they had suggested that the residents of Okinawa actually rose up against American soldiers, and they were given 2 grenades. One was basically to kill American soldiers with one, as many as they could, and then the other one was to kill their family so that the American soldiers did not violate their family, kill them, torture them, this kind of thing. So when you look at that one, the schools are really the second example, when you think about it, of socialization. The parents are going to be the dominant one, and then that makes sense. And then when you start getting into schools, you had the Anthem, which is a way of socializing you, whether it should just be in English or English-Spanish. We had not just the Anthem, but when you think back to it, we had the Japanese, and their argument was, the people in Okinawa said that's not the way that it was. It wasn't that these citizens rose up. It was that they were told that they needed to commit suicide. They didn't do this voluntarily. And then when you start getting into some of the school things, of course we had the Holocaust simulation in South Carolina, and then we also had the Montana legislature who was using kids to pass bills. So those were all examples of that. The Addicts article with Barbara Harris was an example of a peer socialization. But her story is fantastic, and make sure that you're good and specific as you tell that one, because we did spend time on that one to be sure. And then Huck Finn is another example of socialization in the schools as well. I think you may have just given me another big theme, because talking about young people or socialization in schools, the Huck Finn one is another really good example. And I don't know if I had shown you all the cartoon, but there's one where this little kid raises his hand, or the teacher is like, Mark Twain used the N-word 219, actually I've got it here, maybe we'll have enough time to put this up, but it's got this political cartoon that I usually have on my door, and I just found this, but talking about Huck Finn, it says here, Mark Twain used the N-word 219 times in Huck Finn. He was one of the 19th century's great, and the little kid raises his hand and says gangster rappers, because when you think about this, that would be maybe the association that today's culture would make. So with this in mind, make sure that you've got a good sense of that school theme, that Democrat-Republican theme, women's issue kind of theme. You could even, when you think about it, the Saudi Arabia article about re-education is an example of socialization too. It absolutely is. So even if some of these articles don't fit within the chapters, you're going to be able to make some connections. For this exam, I had an instructor years ago that told me, he said, if you write everything you know, you don't know enough. Think about that. If you write everything you know, you don't know enough. What I'm going to ask you to do on this is sit down and think about these multiple choice questions, because there will be tricks in there. I'm not going to try and trick you with what I put on the exam. If we talked about it a lot in class, it's going to get its due attention. And if it's the Rwanda article, it may be on there, but it might be a real fraction of the actual exam. If you read these questions, and y'all are going to be committing crimes, it's going to be critical thinking, these kinds of things. Y'all are going to be doing the things that we discussed in these articles. If you aren't sure of the answer, if you want to write a note in the margin and pick an answer, that's fine, because sometimes it can be confusing. I have no problem with that. When you take the short answers, make sure that if you write 3 or 4 sentences, it's not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough, because we've gone into some pretty good depth on these things. So show me what you know, and the more that you show me, the more that I can give you credit for it, and that's really just the bottom line. Ben, you took some exams in the summer, and Tal, you did as well. Ben, do you want to say anything? Because I think you did pretty well.
Say again.
Do you want to say anything about the exams?
Just write more than what you have. You're doing short answers.
Write more than what you have.
If you think you know something, then it's better to try to fix that.
Bless you. Okay. Okay. Tall, you want to say anything? Tall's like, no, I don't want to give away any secrets. Ray, you've taken me before. You've taken me twice, I believe, now. Any thoughts?
Just all the little details count. It really helps out.
Be specific. I'm not going to try and trick you with what I put on there, but I will try. You're not going to have seen anything like this before. Right? Ben? Ray? Yeah, you're not going to have seen anything like this before, so keep that in mind. Do y'all have any other questions about anything from chapter 3? Because I know we did a rush job on it, and it looks like the class has gone in, so they don't need this room. Do you have anything else that you'd like from chapter 3?
I want to know about the nation state.
The nation, oh yeah, that's right. I was
Whether a
mentioning,
nation is born or whether a state is born first.
the chapter says what?
Nation. No,
The-
state.
The chapter says the state came first and not the nation, but in fact, a lot of people in class thought it was the state that came first. And what was the difference?
No,
We thought the nation came first.
Yeah. The state came first. The class thought the nation came first. The text said that the state came first. What's the difference between state and nation?
The state is the government or the system,
Yeah.
and then the nation is the people.
People, culture, language, history, those kinds of things.
Wait, why did we say why?
It makes sense that the people would form the government, but in fact, when the chapter gives the example of the United States, everybody came to the United States from all sorts of different places, and they didn't become Americans until after the government was formed. So in that regard, it was the government that actually created the Americans, and not Americans that created the government.
But there are exceptions.
And there are exceptions. And to be honest with you, I would be inclined to say that the nation came first as well. Chapter says state. Sana got very angry with me about that, from what I remember in class. She just went on and on about it.
I couldn't understand it because.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense to me. I struggle with that, but that's what they said as far as that was concerned. Anything, do you want to deal with any of the articles from chapter 7?
We have time.
Well, yeah, we have.
As long as the red light's on.
Okay.
Can you do the Rwanda?
Okay, we've done the Rwanda like twice now. It's just really quick, so watch the film on that one. Go ahead.
Well, I wasn't here on Tuesday, so if you could just like go over the marijuana and then the addict one, like briefly, I read it.
Do the addict one briefly. The marijuana one was actually Colorado Denver, the city of Denver, talking about legalizing weed.
Did we
Did we
should
not
go
talk
over
about
that
that?
one?
Okay, I will remove that then.
Oh, fair enough.
Okay, I will remove the marijuana one. What was the addict one? Y'all tell the story. Who was Barbara Harris?
She offered addicts $200 to get sterilized.
She did. I want to say, and I'll get an accurate number on this, I think she's up that to like $300 or $400 even now. So basically, if you could demonstrate that you were a drug-addicted person and that you had gotten long-term birth control or sterilization, she would pay you, at the time of the article, $200 cash money, no questions asked. Now, why was she doing this?
To prevent crack babies and
Yeah.
foster care babies and just to prevent it was to save our tax dollars in the long run.
Somebody once told me that they felt like Barbara Harris was like the Batman or the Batwoman of crack babies. Because when you think about it, she's almost breaking laws or questionably enforcing laws in order to try and solve a problem. She's basically going and she's saying because of the problem that crack babies have as far as survival, because of the torture that they have health-wise, when you think about it, because of the foster care system, because these crack mothers typically don't necessarily keep the children, this is something that hurts the individual and it hurts the taxpayer, it hurts the economics. I want to stop the birth of these crack babies. She's not trying to solve, why was she not trying to solve